I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power 365 show, where I interview staff at Microsoft across the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 technology stack. I hope you'll find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. In this episode, we'll be focusing on the Dynamics 365 Sales Accelerator and all the great things that it offers for salespeople. Our guest today is from India. He works for Microsoft as a senior product manager. You can find links to his bio, social media, etc. in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Swapnil.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the show. And this is such an interesting topic that we're going to discuss today because I've used this type of technology for a long time and I'm very interested in it and really how these type of tools can empower salespeople. But before we get there, let's just talk a bit about you and what you do when you're not working for Microsoft. So tell us a bit about your family, your food, fun, the part of India you live in, and what's life all about for you.
Sure. So, Mark, I live in Hyderabad, India, with my wife and kids. I have two beautiful daughters of age 1 and 7.5. So most of my free time is spent with them.
Mhm.
I do like to read non-fiction books whenever I get a chance. So, and I'm not too big on food, but yeah, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't mind like a good meal.
Nice. And, when you travel for things like holidays and things like that, which part of India do you recommend to go to travel for vacations?
Oh yeah. So I'm in Hyderabad, which is in the southern part of India.
Mm-hmm.
But for like most of my time, I was in the northern part of India, which is around the Delhi area. This is the capital of India. So there are a lot of mountains near Delhi. So I recommend people to sort of go in those mountains area. They're very well connected from Delhi, like about 300 odd kilometers from Delhi only. So yeah, people sort of when they come to India, India is such a diverse country. They enjoy almost in every place and city. So if you have never been to India and if you're planning to come to India, start with maybe the south and then like come towards the north, and that's when you can
Nice.
end your trip. You'll see so many beautiful cities, states, things to do.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Sounds like a plan. Tell us about how you ended up in Microsoft. What's been your IT career journey, and then and right up to your current role in Microsoft.
Sure. So, Mark, I am a software engineer turned product manager. After my graduation, I started my career as a software engineer. I worked in a startup for about couple of years. It was my first job, and I made sure that I learned a lot from there. After that, I changed my job and I continued to work as a software engineer in other companies. I was a good engineer, but during all this time, I had sort of more interest in finding out user problems, market opportunities, and gaps rather than just writing an optimal piece of code. So I ultimately transitioned into product management. I've been working as a PM for last several years,
Mhm.
and I joined Microsoft in last. It has been 1 year for me now, and
Wow.
I really like it here, like in working with people over here.
So you joined while the pandemic was on. How was that transition into the organization?
Yeah, that was little. It was anxious, I would say. So when you are, let's say, joining the new company, right?
Mhm.
You want to meet the people, want to see where you would be working from. So I joined. I was not even in Hyderabad. I was in Mumbai, India.
Mhm.
So I was feeling a little anxious, but the team here they made it very welcoming for like new people to come and join in. But yeah, I got a chance to meet with the entire team about 3 months ago, and it was wonderful.
Awesome.
But yes,
Awesome.
the onboarding was still smooth. It is that
Hmm.
you individually feel like a little isolated because you have never been to the company, you have never met the people in person. It was
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
not easy, but it was the team made it like a beautiful journey.
I like it. I like it. So let's talk a bit about the product you're involved with, which is the Dynamics 365 Sales Accelerator. First of all, in your words, how do you describe what this grouping of tools that are designed for salespeople all about?
Yeah. So Sales Accelerator is an engagement and productivity tool, and it is generally available within Dynamics 365 Sales. It helps improve sellers' productivity with a prioritized pipeline, automated outreach recommendations, and integrated engagement channel. I know that's quite a mouthful, so let's take an example to understand this.
Mm,
Assume there is a company that sells financial products. They deal in services such as insurance, mortgages, securities, bond, etc. Now, they get lead from their website, from their partners, from their, let's say, physical outlets and other sources. As lead come to their system, those leads needs to be assigned to an appropriate seller.
mhm,
A seller that specializes in insurance should work on insurance specific leads.
mhm,
Similarly, a seller that specializes in mortgages should work on mortgage specific leads.
mhm,
Now, this is the first problem that is solved by Sales Accelerator with help of segments and assignment rule. Using those, we can create rules such as leads coming from website and interested in insurance should be routed to a specific team or like a specific group of sellers.
mhm,
We can distribute the leads in like a round robin fashion on, and we can even like accommodate sellers availability into consideration. Now, once leads get into the system and once those are assigned to the seller, these sellers are generally sales development representative and business development representative,
mhm,
more commonly known as SDRs and BDRs.
mhm, mhm,
They mostly follow a fixed pattern for a particular scenario. For example, to handle an insurance specific lead, they would first maybe call the customer, understand their requirement, share details of services or the product over an email, and after a gap of few hours or maybe on the next day, they would again call the customer
mhm,
to see if they are really interested. If they are, they would move the lead on to the next stage. If they couldn't, and or if they couldn't get a response from the customer, they would make sure to follow up. Now that's where sequences come into the picture. It's the core of Sales Accelerator. Sales managers can use Sequence Designer, configure sequence of activities for different scenarios. So we just took an example of a financial company, right?
mhm,
So you could have a sequence on how to handle leads that are interested in insurance product, a sequence on how to handle leads for mortgage product, and
mhm.
maybe like a different sequence on like how to entertain high net worth individuals that are interested in wealth management services. So manager can have like a different type of activities such as phone call, email, LinkedIn steps,
Mhm.
task, appointment, etc. And they can use those in a sequence.
So that's interesting about sequences, and the use case, the example that you've given is around a lead coming through from a resource and then an outbound conversation. It's around a particular product set, etc. If we look at some of the other products in the industry, there's a product in the market called Outreach as an example, and a lot of times salespeople are doing outbound calls. They're generating new leads, and sequences are an absolutely amazing tool, right? Because what it does, it allows you to forget about forgetting around what's the next step, right, of engagement
Exactly.
with a particular customer, specifically
Exactly.
when you're doing high volume sales. So you're engaging with many people. So how does Sales Accelerator address that outbound story? Is it designed only for inbound and then tailor around a particular product, or are you really addressing also that outreach based scenario where oftentimes it's around lead generation in its own right?
You are absolutely right. So Sales Accelerator does is targeted towards the high velocity selling scenarios, as you called
Hmm.
out.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, for example, sellers they get a work list which shows them like the next best lead to contact to if the lead is already in the
Hmm.
system.
Hmm.
If the lead is not in the system, they can still reach out to a customer, and they can very easily create a new lead with maybe like a double of clicks. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then once a lead gets created, it tells them which leads to reach out to, as you called out, because they're dealing with such a large volume of sort of contacts. We don't want them to forget things, so we tell them this is the best lead to reach out to based on the lead score, the activity which is due, the value of the lead, and few other parameters. And as you click on a lead opportunity or a record, we load the workspace, which tells them this is the immediate activity or step they should do. Whether
Mm-hmm.
it is calling out a customer or emailing them product details, or maybe let's say doing some research on LinkedIn, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it could be,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can just do that activity in a single click without jumping between applications. So
Mm-hmm.
sellers is save a lot of time while reaching out to customers using Sales Accelerator.
So some of the power of a sequence comes down to the boilerplate templates that are created as part of an activity. And if we break down activities, and an activity could be an email, an activity could be a phone call, it could be a Teams, meeting, and it could also be a LinkedIn outreach, right? You might, there's a lot of evidence to show that you're going to get a better response to by contacting someone via LinkedIn than you are necessarily going to contact them via email, let alone these days via phone. It's funny, I had a phone call the other day where somebody was obviously a cold call to me, and I've got to the point that I don't even respond. I just literally hang up. Like the minute I
Hmm.
know the minute I know,
Yeah.
and I just, mate, there's nothing, years ago, you would have said, no, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And they would have, you know, what I've noticed is the tactic at the moment is that they will say ABC company or something company name you've never heard of. And of course, what's your human response? Oh, I've not heard of this company. Oh, you've just asked me a question. Great. And
Hmm.
away they go. The thing is that doesn't, if we look at the templates that people create and the templates that work, etc. And I say boilerplate because everything has to be tailored. Everything, and with AI nowadays, the ability to tailor is so much more. But to find that common ground in a conversation, where the common ground either be by email, whether it be by any form of communication or contact, how what is Microsoft doing in that respect into making the tool flexible enough that a something that's working for one team one stakeholder, if I'm a sales manager and I have a team of salespeople, that I can quickly roll that out to other people and get them using, a similar engagement method. In other words, how can I bubble up the best practice from, my most successful sellers and then replicate and train and use that more broadly without it being done only once a year, but I could change on a week by week basis based on how the market is evolving.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let me answer that in two parts. First is
Mm.
how can a sales manager templatize the success, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
Second, like as you called out, what are we doing in terms of sort of helping sellers don't have this sort of a very cold way of outreaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the first one. Now sequences enable sales managers to create templates, right? And onboard sellers for different scenarios. For
Mm-hmm.
example, you may run a campaign and say, hey, customers that we did not win, that were sort of lost opportunities in last
Mm-hmm.
semester, let's reach out to them again with with and let's show them our new product improvements and the new pricing. Right? Now you can create sequences, and now okay, these are the things that are working well with these sellers. You
Mm-hmm.
can templatize that in a sequence, and then you can use that for each and every seller. We are coming up with sequence analytics
Mm-hmm.
that would enable managers to actually drill down in a sequence and understand how is it really performing, which are
Nice.
the steps which are working well, which are the steps that are very redundant or that are not required, which are
Mm-hmm.
the steps on which we see like the most common drop off, and why is it happening in that
Yeah.
step. So we are working on that now. On the second part, like what are we doing, so we have couple of very interesting tools out there. One is which are built in Microsoft. One is who
Hmm.
knows whom. So if
Yes.
somebody from your company already has been in touch with that prospect or with that customer, right? Why don't we reach out to our internal sort of team member and ask them for an introduction for that company or for that contact?
Hmm.
We can find out, hey, what are they really interested in? What are their needs, right? And get
So,
a
so, yep. So if we take that example, who knows whom? Just help me where it's sourcing that information from the connectedness. Is it sourcing it from the email server, or is it sourcing it only from data that's already in the dataverse?
it is
The
so
whom, the who's know
currently.
whom.
Yeah, yeah. So if you have turned on your Outlook sync,
Hmm.
we will get those your emails within Dynamics also, and then we
Hmm.
can like give you better recommendations. If you have not turned that on, you would get it from the existing data of the CRM of Dynamics CRM.
Okay, so I find that interesting because let's say the receptionist in the organization is buying a BMW from a BMW, right? Directly from BMW. And then I'm a seller in that organization and I want to sell to BMW. As a receptionist, she might have sent out an email, but she wouldn't be using Dynamics 365 sales because she's not in the sales based function. So that data is not going to be in there. Now, why I ask this is 6 years, 7 years ago, there was a company in Ireland that created a product that analyzed the email headers, so to from CC fields, right, and whether it was outbound, inbound, that type of thing. So they didn't look at the content; they just analyzed off Exchange back then the email headers, and they had a kind of who knows whom. But what it did is that if your company, like mine, has over 300,000 employees, you're going to really drill in and find those connections, not because they were in CRM, but in our case, like if we were using modern ways, would say because they're the Office graph, right? The Office graph's going to light that up. So are we not using the Office graph to light up who knows whom?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting point, Mark. So currently in Dynamics, we are not, but
Hmm.
we have recently launched a product called Viva Sales,
Yes.
and we made a big announcement about that.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
are using that, and that has integration with like Outlook, with your teams, and it can
Yes.
even integrate with your Salesforce instance. That's when we can bring you those recommendations. Hey,
Hmm.
Mark, because even though, like as you mentioned, right, that email may not be in the CRM, but it is still like you may have reached out to BMW. And
Yep.
then if I am trying to reach out to BMW, it can tell me, get in touch with Mark. He may have in touch
Hmm.
with BMW.
Exactly. I like
So
it. I
that
like it.
and we that's a it's a very big initiative from our company's end, and we are getting a lot of interest in that product because currently, like one of the core problems with CRM is that sellers don't find it too friendly.
Yeah.
They see it as like a necessary evil. That's
Hmm.
the problem we want to solve. We want
Mm,
them to
mm, mm,
actually
mm.
give them value and without having them to spend any extra time or effort in the product.
So I noticed that, and I just read the latest doc on the Sales Accelerator and the whole area of voice, teams with voice, and that type of thing. That's all part of it now, right? So I can go back and I can see things like call transcripts. I can see things like, AI is used to extract from the conversation the actions that I need to take as a seller, and then I can assign them across and go, hey, here's my call summary and the actions I need to take. Is that if you because I know you need the premium and enterprise licenses, right, to use Accelerator. Is that all part, as long as you have those license constructs, you can do the whole voice piece as long as you've got, of course, got it set up. Is that all available? And then does that lead into specific lighting up content in Sales Accelerator?
Yes, it does. So on the licensing part, uh, about I think 6 months back, Sales Accelerator and what you mentioned, we call
Hmm.
it conversation intelligence. It was
Yes.
just part of our premium SKU, premium
Yes.
SKU. Now we are providing Sales Accelerator, conversation intelligence, Teams integration, and our other premium features with an enterprise SKU as well,
Hmm.
with certain limitations. So even if you
Yes.
have like now an enterprise license, you can just enable CI and Conversion Sales Accelerator, and you can get those recommendations saying, "Hey, follow up, like just review this call with Mark. and it would
Mhm.
automatically suggest me activities. For example, while talking to you, if I promise to share details over an email, or if I say, hey, I'll set up a call for the next week, it will just remind me and it will say, hey, share this with Mark. It will show this as an activity and I can just convert that into a task, and it will, and Sales Accelerator will remind me
Mhm.
saying your
Mhm.
activity is due for this particular opportunity. So all that is possible. And with AI, as you mentioned, we are also coming up with account based insights. For example, if I am selling you insurance, right?
Mhm.
Can I
Mhm.
also sell you a mortgage product with it?
Mhm.
Can I also sell you bonds with it? So we are coming up with account based insight that will tell sellers if they can upsell, cross sell other products, or if there is maybe like a risk of churn in any particular account. We are getting into all the scenarios now.
Right. Do you see the sales accelerator being fundamentally more for B2C selling or equally for B2B? Or what do you see as the main sweet spot?
Awesome. That's a very good question. So we begin Sales Accelerator for high velocity selling and
Mhm.
focus on SDR and BDR scenarios,
Mhm.
which were
Mhm.
mostly B2C, as you called out.
Mhm. Mhm.
But now we are seeing an increased demand from other sales roles such as account managers, account executives, customer success managers that want to
Yeah.
use Sales Accelerator. Currently, it is little limited to use Sales Accelerator for those scenarios,
Mhm.
but we are very actively working on enabling account based selling. And in 3 to 4 months, you will
Mhm.
see Sales Accelerator like working very well for account based selling scenarios and team based selling scenarios in which not just one seller, but like a group of sellers work together while they're selling to a big account, and they're selling different products and services.
Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of white space in that, right? That B2B sales opportunity. And like, I'm on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, so I'm on the premium version of that. And I see constantly things like some of the data LinkedIn gives you is like, let's say Microsoft was my customer. I just don't want to use other company names for the conversation. Let's say you're my customer or you're my potential customer. It'll tell me, oh, Microsoft's headcount is increasing in the last 3 months, or Microsoft's headcount is decreasing. And of course, what LinkedIn is looking at is the number of advertised roles and or are new people joining that company or are more people leaving the company, in other words, updating their LinkedIn profiles to say they're no longer there or move to another company. And that type of thing for account based sellers, right, gives some very interesting insights. Because when I look at the accounts that I sell into, that type of information tells me, okay, this company is either in a growth phase or they're in a contraction phase, right? They're either starting to battle a recession or they're very optimistic in their outlook, right? Because that's going to govern the number of new hires and or the volume of people leaving that organization. So those type of scenarios, because I know that LinkedIn Sales Navigator integrates with Sales Accelerator. Are those some of the use cases, particularly around the B2B scenarios that you're looking at?
Yes, we are. As I mentioned, we are getting more and more into B2B selling.
Hmm.
Currently, the integration that we have with LinkedIn Sales Navigator is restricted to sending an email,
Hmm.
sending a connect request, asking for an introduction from
Yes, a
somebody
friend.
within your
Yep, let
team,
you know. Hmm.
and like doing research.
Yes,
But
yes.
these insights, as you called out, uh, if you can use LinkedIn Sales Navigator's widget, if I may say, inside
Hmm.
Sales
Hmm.
Accelerator to get
Yes.
those insights, but we're still in the process of integrating those suggestions with our account based suggestions and show it as like one story to the user. We're working on
Yeah.
that piece, Mark, right now. It's still not done yet.
So I just look at the time and I realize, man, there's so much to discuss. One of the things in any marketing tool, outbound outreach marketing tool, and this has been around for years, is the concept that within, for example, an outbound email, you place a pixel, right? A pixel that calls back to the server and says, hey, someone looked at this page and it can give you a bunch of information. If you had a cookie set, etc., there's information. Now, if I look at all the outbound or high velocity sales tools out there in the market. They've taken that concept and put it inside the outbound sales tool. So once again, you kind of can get this notification. I sent the email and it was open. Might not have been replied to, might not have responded, but now I know that it was open. In other words, somebody did read it as opposed to it went to Never Never Land. It never even got in front of anybody. Nobody clicked and opened it. Is that technology all implemented in Sales Accelerator now or not?
No, it is implemented. So we have a concept of email engagement. So as you called out, if you turn that on, you will know whether like an email was read, replied, even downloaded. And
Yep.
when you're creating a sequence, you can add conditions. That's one of the very, very powerful feature of Sales Accelerator. You can say, hey, if this email was replied, you follow this particular sequence of steps. If this email was never replied or opened, then you do a follow up with the customer, and in which you will send like a reminder email saying, "Hey, Mark, I tried reaching out to you a couple of days back. Did you get a
Yeah.
chance to see my email?" So and so forth. Mm, So that is implemented, and this reminds me like this sort of advanced conditioning based sequence of steps and activities we have for like e-phone calls, emails, and you can add your own sales stage saying, hey, if this lead is like from it has certain value, you follow these steps. If the lead is it's of higher value,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe you will do like a more personalized touch with the customer, in which you will call
Yeah.
more rather than emailing. So
Mm-hmm.
all of that is built in with Sales Accelerator.
Now, feel free to I can't give me an answer because of NDA, etc. Because what I'm going to ask, you might not be able to say at this point, and that's fine. But with Viva Sales coming, that type of functionality, of Pixel embedded in email directly inside of Outlook would be pretty phenomenal for not just sales engagement, but all sorts of things. Why am I not getting a response to my email? Did they see it? Are they, you know, is that kind of functionality you're seeing going to go through into Viva Sales, or is that something we can't talk about at the moment?
I will like not to talk about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we are still in very early stages of development of
Mm.
Viva Sales. It's in preview, so I am not at the liberty to disclose those things right now.
Yeah, early days, early days.
Yeah.
The last question I have then for you is this: what type of organizations, and without mentioning company names, etc., but kind of like what industries are you commonly seeing that have adopted Sales Accelerator across the Microsoft ecosystem?
Yeah, we have like a very broad spectrum of industries. So I took an example of a financial company. So we have a lot of financial companies that have adopted us. We have a lot of edtech companies that have adopted Sales Accelerator that are helping students get admissions in
Mm-hmm.
college and universities. We have car manufacturers that are adopting us, and even we have few retailers that are adopting us. So we are
Mm-hmm.
seeing very like explosion of use cases and scenarios in which users are adopting Sales Accelerator, and that is just amazing. We even have a lot of technology companies that are adopting Sales Accelerator, and that's where we are getting this push of enabling more and more account selling scenarios within Sales Accelerator.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing what you bring out in that B2B space, and particularly about how deep you could potentially go with the Sales Navigator integration. Because I just feel that a modern seller these days really needs to be in LinkedIn so much more than probably what they are when engaging customers. Swapnil, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for taking the time. Before I let you go, is there any other resources that you want people to go take a look at that we can put in the show notes so people can do their research a bit more?
Yeah, so I generally recommend people to look at our overview video on Sales Accelerator and sequences. If
Hmm.
you just search Dynamics 365 Sales Accelerator on YouTube, you will get these videos. I'll share those video links with you, and as
Yes.
you called out, you can put those in the notes.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show from Microsoft, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. How will you create on the Power Platform today? Ciao.